we're going to go ahead and get started. There is a link to a quick form right here. Actually, let me copy and paste it in the chat so that you guys could have it. Basically, I'm just looking for what else you would want beyond today, either for free. I'm going to be doing this about once a month, and or for a super inexpensive experience. I am working on creating some courses for Udemy, so I'm creating some really low cost courses that do a specific thing. And by low cost, I'm talking like $10, $15, $20, very low cost, so that you could take the whole course. And they're about completing a specific kind of report, like a cash flow report or something along those lines. So it's just asking you a few questions like that. It's perfectly optional. But let's go ahead and get started. My host is on, Miss Marlena Stark. Thank you, Marlena, for having me today. I appreciate this.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. And if I keep looking to the left, that's where I can see everybody's picture. So forgive me if I keep looking to the left. I am still in my coronavirus temporary digs. I can't wait to get back to my real office, which both are in my home. I know that sounds crazy, but I gave up my space for some family members to sleep. So can't wait to get back in my own digs, which will happen very, very soon. This is going to be an introduction course for Power BI, specifically for the GP user. And so we're going to go through some very, very basic stuff. As you could see, I only have 12 slides, and actually that's a hidden slide, so we'll skip past that. So that now makes us 11. This is the agenda. We're going to do a little tiny brief introduction of Power BI. We're only going to cover a few things so we could get to some real meat and potatoes. This course is going to be recorded, so you can go back and watch it at a Dexpro site. Marlena and her team will make sure you have access to it. And at that point, you could go back and rework all of this using your own GP. So that should work good. We're going to connect to SQL Server. We're going to then connect to GL data and the checkbook balance data. And then we'll do a little bit of data modeling basics to get you started. And then we're going to create some visuals. And that's what we hope to do during this time. So let me start with a little bit of information about Power BI as a whole. There are three elements to Power BI. There's the Power BI desktop, there's Power BI in the cloud, and there's the Power BI mobile service. And basically the way most people use it is they'll create their reports in the Power BI desktop. They'll then publish it to the cloud. I'll do that today, which is nothing but the powerbi.com site. Once it's in the cloud, you can consume it on mobile devices. Now, a mobile device could be your iPhone, it could be your iPad, it could be your Android device, or you could even go to the Microsoft Store and download a mobile device for your desktop so that you could consume the reports the same way you would in the cloud. And they all work together. So everything you build in the desktop will then be available on your phone. Now, the desktop software is free to download and free to use, regardless of what kind of account you have. And that's where we're going to be spending the bulk of our time today, because that's where you do the bulk of the work. Now, this is a pretty big screen, so I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights here, but I want to review the three different versions or three different types of Power BI. There's the free version. Yep, you could use it for free, but it's really for a single user thing. So the only difference between the paid or the free and the paid version is the ability to share. So I can't create a report, publish it to the cloud, and share it with my team. I can create in the desktop and give them a desktop file, which would be the same as giving an Excel file to somebody. I could do that, but that's not really sharing. So you can still publish it to the cloud. You could still do some ad hoc stuff, and Microsoft will manage the data for you. And obviously there are some data limitations for all of these. Then there is probably the most popular, and that's the Power BI Pro, which is $9.99 per user per month. So anybody who would use Power BI in your cloud or Power BI that you want to be able to share with, to receive a share or to share, they would need the Pro version. And it's basically the same, except it does those that has that additional collaboration, which also includes the ability to add things like row level security, because that's a form of sharing. Or it doesn't take it doesn't take effect until it's shared. I guess that's a better way of saying it. And again, that's what most people fall into. If you're not sure what you want, start with the free version. Actually, when you start, just get a trial of the pro, and then you could get the free if you want, and see where you stand. And then there's the premium, which does not fit most GP users because it does start at $5,000 a month. Now, if you get that one, it's really more about space and adding in a lot of other things that are pretty cool, like machine learning and some tools like that. But the thing about the premium is there is a point where it's cheaper to get premium, because at the $10 per user per month, you'll only need the pro version for the people who are building reports. So if you have 3 people in your company who are building reports, and let's say 1,000 people who are going to consume reports, and you don't need to get 1,002 Power Pro license just because you want to share. It would be cheaper to get the premium version, only get the pro version for the 2 people who have to build the reports. Then everyone else could basically use the free version and take advantage of sharing. So there is a point where the premium becomes cheaper, but most GP users will fall between the free and the pro version, usually within the pro version. And I know I'm going pretty quickly, so my apologies for that. Oh, by the way, if you have questions, I should have said this earlier, you can click the raise your hand option if you want to come off mute to speak, and Haley will unmute you, or you could just type it into the chat. Haley's going to be watching that for me and asking the questions. And I do have some Q&A time, hopefully at the end, that we'll get to. But if you're not asking questions, I'm just going to keep demoing right to the very last moment. All right. Because GP is an on-premise product and it uses an on-prem SQL, and that's even true if you're using Microsoft Azure and you have your data there, or you're using most hosters, you have to use something called a gateway, and the gateway is free software. The gateway has to be installed wherever the GP server data is, so on that same network, and that's how, when it's in the cloud, you could choose to refresh your data. It uses the gateway to connect to the local on-prem. So the gateway is always talking to the cloud. And in this case, it would be talking to your SQL server. And Power BI can refresh that way. And again, there's 2 versions of this. The one that most GP users would use is the regular on-premise gateway. It's for single or multiple users, and you could use it for the entire Power Platform. So if you build Power Apps, or you choose to use Power Automate as well to build some flows, you could use that in the same gateway and communicate with your SQL server. The on-premise personal mode gateway is for one person only, and it only works with Power BI. So I don't ever see a need for anyone to use the personal mode. I would recommend that you go ahead and get the one that supports Power Platform, because they work the same. And if I pull this up, this is my personal gateway that you could see right here on the screen. That might help see better. And this is just my personal gateway. And you could see I could use it with Power Apps and Power Automate. And I could use it with my Power BI. And it is connected. BusyBee is the name of, BusyBee SASE is the name of the server that it's associated with. BusyBee is actually my SQL server. All right. So again, it just goes through the gateway to connect to on-premise data. Now, if you have someone who has created custom APIs for you, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you could just put your fingers in your ears for a few moments and just know you need to use the gateway. But if you have someone who's built a custom API, and I know at least one cloud provider for GP has APIs built, then you could skip the gateway altogether and connect to your SQL Server via the APIs. So that's good to know. Now, one of the cool things is if I use on-prem GP and I use something in the cloud like Salesforce or even Microsoft CRM or MailChimp or whatever I use, I can connect that data to my GP data in Power BI on a report. So the gateway would just be to get the SQL data up or any other on-prem data you may have, and you can connect to other things as well with different kinds of access. And you'll see that as we go along. All right, so just 2 more slides for the introduction, then we'll start digging. I want to talk about the upgrade cadence because it's very, very quick. So the desktop version has a monthly update, and they add new features that are pretty darn cool each and every time. So totally worth making sure you stay on the latest version, but it's a bit of a chore. I'm going to come back to the desktop in a moment. The cloud version updates every week, and knock on wood, I've never seen a problem that it caused by updating that quickly. And you don't have to do any upgrades for either one of these. It just happens. Now the desktop, depending on where you get your data, you might have to download and install it, but you don't have to worry about doing any kind of upgrade on anything. Everything will upgrade for you. They've really done a remarkable job with that. So I'm going to talk about, again, the cadence on this when I get into this slide. So there's two ways you could get the desktop. You could get it from the Microsoft App Store, which is also where you get the mobile version for your Windows machine. And that is my preferred method. Or you can download it. I'm going to show you how you could access it from the store and download it. I put download in a really ugly red because I do not recommend that. That version comes out every single month. If you get it from the App Store, it will update for you automatically. You do not have to download anything. You do not have to install anything. It'll automatically upload. The biggest benefit of that is that everyone in your company who uses the desktop will be on the same version always. And so you don't have to worry about the fact that you might have the latest version that came out yesterday and you build a report and you give it to someone and they're on a version from 3 months ago and the report won't run for them because they haven't downloaded and updated in a while. So that will solve that problem. Another benefit, you do not have to have admin rights to install it if you get it from the store. Where you do have to have admin rights and install it if you get it from here. So let's take a quick jump in here. I'm gonna just come over here and go to powerbi.com. This is what it looks like when you go to powerbi.com. And let me see if I can zoom in. I'll try not to do this too much. That might get you a little drunk. All right, so if you go to the products right here, and you go to Power BI Desktop, you could see the Pro, the Premium, and even we talked a little bit about mobile. Report Server is part of Premium. I'm not going to get into that today. But if I go to Desktop and click, then I have a couple of options here. If I click on this yellow button, which seems to be what Microsoft wants us to do, it says download for free. That will take you to the Microsoft Store. Microsoft wants you to use the store to do this. Otherwise, if you click here, you're going to get this option. Let me unzoom, where you then have to select your language and then select, which one of these you want. I don't want to click on it right now, but there are a 62-bit and a 32-bit and a 64-bit. You want to try to get the 64-bit. It's much more difficult. You have to download it each and every time. Otherwise, if you just click on this option, it's going to open up the Microsoft Store for you, which is opening on another monitor for me. There we go. And it knows it's already out here for me. So that's why it's like, hey, do you want me just to launch it? But also in the store, if you come in and you do a search for Power BI, you're going to see two options, the desktop, and you're going to see Power BI. Power BI is the mobile version. You could tell that it's got the little phone icon right there. And I think that might even be a HoloLens, but here we have the Power BI desktop. This is the one that you would want to use. And again, the big advantage here is it's going to automatically install and update for you. So please try to get it from the App Store. If your IT has you locked out, you're going to be saving them a lot of hassle because otherwise they're going to have to come around every single month and install it for everybody, one right after the other, so everybody is on the same version.
Hey,
So,
Belinda,
yeah.
real quick, we have a question. I think you may have just answered it though, but the question was, what is the website name to download desktop version?
Okay, so I just put in Power BI, and then you would want to go under products. So powerbi.com, and then click on the products, and then choose the desktop. Thank you for that question. I appreciate that.
Great.
Okay. What is your first name? I'm guessing your last name is Ravindran? What's your first name? Hi, yeah. Oh, you can't, you're not unmuted, so sorry about that. Anyhow, I'll find out later because I'm curious. Okay,
Oh.
so let's go ahead and get our hands.
Now I can speak. So first name is Reggie, spelled as R-E-J-I.
Reggie.
Yeah.
Okay, nice to meet you, Reggie.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, and let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do, let me minimize all of this for right now, and I'm just going to open up Power BI. This is the Power BI desktop, and I had a surprise for me this morning. I talked about it updating each and every time. This whole little page right here just obviously happens since last night. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. If you use the other type of download in the bottom right corner, it'll tell you when there is a new version for you to upload. All right. So in Power BI, they try to build it like a lot of the Power Platform apps. Heidi, thank you for taking Rishi off so he can ask me the question or tell me his first name. We have the canvas area here. This is our report. And when you build a report in Power BI Desktop, it's kind of like building a report in Excel, where you have an Excel application and you have different tabs or different worksheets. And here you can see I have page 1, so I could have different pages to my report. So it's a free independent file that I'm creating. It has an extension PBIX for Power BI. Everything in the Office has X at the end of it, but for Power BI, just like you have the XLSX. And so this is the report the way we would see it. Now reports in Power BI look a lot like a dashboard because they're all made with different kinds of visuals, but they're a little bit different than dashboards. And we'll talk about dashboards later. Probably today. Yeah, we'll at least create one dashboard today because I want to give you enough to kind of give you something to play with until we meet again next month. So next month you can come to me with loads and loads of questions. That's what I'm hoping for. So we have our workspace area here. Over on the left, we have the different modes that we can view in. Where right now we are in the report mode. It's hard for you to tell, but there's a little yellow line right on the edge there. Maybe if I shrink this up a little, you could see it a little bit better, a little yellow line to indicate I'm on the report mode. Then there's also a data mode where I could see all of my data. And then I have the model mode where I can create relationships between my data. And we'll get into that more in just a little bit. We also have 3 panes over here on the right. And right now the visualization pane is the only one that's appearing. And it's where we could select the kind of visual we want and put values in it. We also have a filtering pane, so we can put filters either on a specific visual, on an entire page, or for the entire report. And then we have a field pane. And right now I don't have any data loaded, so you can't see my data. Now, when I connect to data inside of SQL, I'm going to be connecting to either a table in SQL, a view in SQL, or a stored procedure in SQL. So you're going to want to think about what you have rights to do when you connect to it. So notice here it says get data. It also has a get data option here. And then we have get data on our home tab on this ribbon right here. And this is how we connect to our data. So I'm going to just click on the icon for get data. And it opens up this option of all the different choices I have. And there are a lot. It starts with all. I'm going to click on file. You could see I get Excel, CSV, text, JSON. I could get a folder of data. I could data. I could even get a PDF. If there's a table or a chart in a PDF, I can bring that in, or even a SharePoint folder. Under Power Platform, I have some Power Platform options. We'll talk about that more in several lessons from now. A lot of Azure options if you connect to Azure. Online services, if you are doing anything online, like have any data online, like SharePoint Online or Google Analytics or GitHub. I use MailChimp. I think MailChimp's in here somewhere. Or other options. I come in here a lot and I get it from the web a lot. And so there's a lot of different options we can get it from. I skipped over database because we have a lot of database options as well. And I obviously want to get mine from SQL Server because that's where I'm getting my data. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And actually, you know what? Bear with me just a moment. My apologies. Let me turn off my data source settings. Let me get rid of clear. Just ignore this. Okay. So I want you to see me log in because it remembers my credentials for my SQL Server, and I wanted you to see them ask for me rather than just skip past it. So I'm going to select SQL Server Database and go ahead and click on Connect. And the first thing that it asked me, let me zoom in a little, is what is my server name? Now I already told you my server name was BusyBee, and the database I want to connect to is called 2. So I'm going to now come in and click OK. I want to leave it where it says import, because what we're going to actually do is import the data that we're connecting to inside of the Power BI file, just like you would in an Excel file. Power BI has some amazing compression, and we could even do some modeling and clean it up before it actually gets officially in the Power BI file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And now it's asking me about my credentials. So I could use my Windows credentials if I have that set up in my system, or I could come down and use my database credentials. And these would be the credentials you use when you log into GP. But keep in mind, you want to make sure you have access to whatever table, view, or stored procedure you're connecting to. That's right, I said table, view, or stored procedure you can connect to. All right, I'm just going to use my current Windows credential because I have that set up for rights in my machine, and I'm going to apply it at the whole BusyBee, which is the whole SQL engine. So all of my databases will use that. And just like with a lot of things you've seen, when you share data from GP, it warns us that the data has been encrypted in SQL, and then it'll uncrypt it to bring it in. All right, so we end up at this navigator pane, and we can see, especially because we see accounts, account summary, and account transactions. If you use the Excel refreshable reports in GP, you recognize those, and those are definitely views, and they emulate what you see in SmartList. So for example, account transactions, imagine if you went into SmartList and you said, I want to get account transactions, and then you go to columns to add a column and you add every available column. That's what you're going to see. Now I'm just going to highlight it. I'm not going to click in the box, and I get a preview of the data that's here. And there's a lot of data. Now there is so much, it actually truncated it. So I can't see all the rows. Sometimes you could only see one row. That's all, because it's so truncated. But if I scroll across, there are a lot of data. So we want to be careful about which one we choose to make sure we get the right one, but we can clean up a lot of that data. So I know I want to get the account transaction one, and I'm going to go ahead and just click on load for right now, because I want to give you a quick win and show you how you can add some data. Now I could have come right here and said import data from SQL Server, or I could have clicked data over there. I didn't have to click get data on the top. Just like with all things in Microsoft and even in GP, there's about 10 ways to get there. All right, so now my field pane is populated. And what I'm going to do is just stretch it out so I can see the whole name of the fields right there. And in my fields, it sorts it alphabetically right here. So everything is alphabetically. So I have way more fields or columns of data in this query. I connected to a stored procedure. Once it's in Power BI, we either call it a table or a query. So I have tons more data than I need. Some of them have a sigma, which indicate it's numerical in nature. Some of them have calendars to indicate that it's the date. And if I drop down on the calendar, I even have the ability to look at it in a date hierarchy. So that's where we'll automatically extract a column for the year, for the quarter, for the month, and for the day. So I have a lot of different options here. If I were to, let me find debit amount. If I were to, here's debit amount, just click on the box on debit amount. It will create this visual over here on the left. And because it knows that the debit amount is a numerical value, it will automatically select the clustered column visual. So if I were to come over here, let me come back in, you could see under visuals, I have this clustered column visual right here. So and I just highlighted it. I should have highlighted it right there like I did. Let me go back. Come in. There we go. Okay, so now, right here, this one is the clustered column chart visual. That's the visual that I had selected. So it automatically creates that field for me. Now I'm just going to stretch this out. If I were to come in and now let me grab count number, and I drop that in on top of it, it'll automatically create this clustered column to show me the account or the total debits amounts for each one of these accounts. And if I just rest my cursor over it, I'm going to see what's called a tooltip. And this is showing me the fields that are represented in wherever my mouse is and what the values are. So I could actually see the account number, that's an accounts payable account, and I could see the total debit amount right next to it. Now, here in the visualization pane in the middle, I could see I had the access, and that is my account number, and the values is my debit amount. So the visualization pane here does two things. Number one, it allows us to populate different parts of each of the visuals because we could see the visual that is selected right there. And we could select the fields that we want to see, but it also gives us the ability to do some formatting on it. And formatting here is more about just changing the color or changing the font and making it pretty. It's also about making the whole process a lot more functional. Now, I'm going to come on the value line here, and I'm just going to grab the credit amount field, and I'm going to drag it right after the debit amount. And now you could see for each one of these fields, I could see the debit amount and I could see the credit amount. And this is because it's a clustered column chart. If I were to change this visual, come up here and changed it to 100% stacked bar, now the visual is very different. And again, though, I could still come in and highlight over a specific area and see it. So this one, it puts everything at 100%, and I can see the change that has occurred here. I'm going to come back to the clustered column chart. Okay, so that's a little bit about creating some of these visuals. Now, these are very similar to using pivot tables and charts inside of Excel. So if you're comfortable with that, then it's basically the same thing. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. There's even a table option where I could put all of this in a table. So now you could see, I'm going to resize this. I could see my total debit amount and my total credit amount. Now you notice my debits and my credits don't match. That's because in GP we have unit accounts. So if I were to come in and right here I have, let me get account type. If I were to take account type and drag it into filters on this page right here in the center, I can put a filter on the page where I could say only get posting accounts. And now you could see over here that I'm in balance between my debits and credits. I've eliminated the entries for the unit accounts. So that's one way I could do it. Another way, let me clear this, just get rid of it, is I could also use another visual. So I click anywhere off of this one, so my handlebars are no longer around it. You see the difference when I click on it, my focus is on it, and so the visualization field shows that focus. And when I click off of it, my focus is not around it. I don't see those picture clips, or I call them handlebars, and the visualization pane is empty. There is a visual right here called a slicer. And if I click on the slicer, I have one field. It works just like a slicer in GP or in Excel. So I could come in and add a slicer. So I could take that account type and bring it in. And if I were to select only unit accounts, and let me shrink that up, then now I could see all of the entries for the unit accounts, or I could choose posting accounts and see all the entry for posting, or I could click on the clear selection and see everything. So you see how easy it is to start building a lot of these things out. Now, there are a lot of fields here, but before we start cleaning this up, what I'd like to do is connect to one more piece of data. I want to connect to the bank account, the bank balance, because if I asked you guys, who in your, do you have someone in your company that utilizes, that wants to see the bank balance every day or every week, I guarantee you everyone would be saying yes. Probably some of you are rolling your eyes and laughing because you know who in the company asked for it. Maybe that person is you. There's actually a view in GP that a lot of people don't know about that gives you that balance, right? Because it's usually something that's not easily available because it's not in a particular field, but there is a view out there that gives you that information. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on Get Data again. And I'm going to go to Database, and I'm going to go to SQL Server and connect. Now this time it's not going to ask me, once I put in the server name, it's not going to end the database. It will not ask me for credentials because it remembered and stored my credentials. Now we know if I click OK, I get that navigation list and I could look it up. But this time I want to show you, if you get a SQL script, so long as you have access to the tables, you can connect. So here I'm just going to do a select star. So I'm going to write a little T-SQL script, CM00500. And I'm going to, I just put in my whole link. Let me try that again. Okay, select CM00. Oh, forgot the word from. Okay, so this is my script. So I'm going to get all of the columns in that, and I'm going to paste it there. Oh, hi. So someone asked a question. Reggie, thank you. Can we create only based on transactions, or can we do it, can we do from a report as well? For example, I want the AR and AP aging. Oh yeah, you could do the AR and AP aging. That is for sure. That might be something we want to build next time, but yes, you definitely can do it because there's some cool things you can do. Especially for AR, and sorry, I'm looking to the left. Let me look this way. I was trying to look at your face while I talk to you. Especially for the AR, because you know how you have that extra step in GP where you have to age, and that extra step provides a great deal of flexibility for you from an AR management capability. But when you look at a report, you don't want to have to worry about whether or not it's been aged every time. So you can age independently of the GP aging, which is something that I love. And you could definitely create that as well. Actually, an easy way to do it, you know what, we'll do that in just a second, is we could take advantage of Victoria Uden's views. Are you familiar, Reggie? Shake your head with Victoria Uden's views. Oh, okay, I'll get you excited. Okay. So I'm going to just type this in and go ahead and click OK, because I want you to see that I can also get access to script information. So now here is my preview of my data. So I could see my current balance right here. So that CM00500 is actually a view that you could use. So let's come in. I'm going to collapse up this one, and I'm going to get my bank balance from the query here. And I'm going to clean this up in a bit. But what I want to show you is I'm going to make sure I don't have anything selected. And I'm going to come in and grab the visual called a card. And it's the one that looks like a 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to just move that over. Now, again, there are multiple ways where with it selected, I could just click on the current balance field, or I could drag it on top of it and drop it, or I could drag it into the field here and drop it. So there's 3 ways to get it on. And this is the fake Fabricam company, which has a big negative balance. So don't let that freak you out. But this is the balance of all of my bank accounts. Now it rounds. So I want to deal with that. And that's going to be done with formatting. So with my handlebar still around it, I'm going to come over to the visualization pane, and I'm going to click on the paint roller, the format option. And then I'm going to come down to data label and then change the display units to, there we go. And change the display units to none. and that will stop the rounding. And actually, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and change the text size so it's a little bit smaller. And just so you could see it being done, the category is the name of that field. So I'm going to turn off the category label and turn a title on and make this title name total bank balance. And I'm going to make sure it's black font. It always puts it in a gray, dark gray font, which I don't like. I'm going to center it, and I'm going to make this also 22. And then now I have this visual up here that looks a whole lot different than it did before. And that's the total of my bank balance. While I'm at it, I'm also going to just put a border around it. So it'll
Hey, Belinda,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We've got one more question.
Okay.
Question is there a common GP data dictionary available that identifies the tables to their associated set of business transactions? Example, CM00500 refers to bank account data.
Yes. Okay. So for views, no. But let me go into GP. I should have had this pulled up already. I will pull up GP and show you how to get that one. You know, I have to admit, for a long time, I didn't know that view even existed. And while my GP is pulling up, I'm going to do one more thing over here. I'm going to take this bank card. I've got my hand selected it. My handlebars are around it. I'm going to do Control C and a Control V. And then I'm going to drag this down. And I'm going to change this visual to a multi-row card. And now I have the bank balance field, but I also want to get the checkbook ID and put that in. And now I can see all of the individual bank accounts. Okay. So for GP, there we go. Should have had this up and running, sorry. Okay, so let me go to financials. Typically, for that view, for a lot of the views, no, they just don't have anything. But a lot of times you can do yourself some favors if you want to know what tables things belong in. Although I try to get everything from a view, and if I don't have a view, I try to create a view. And I'm going to show you a better source to get a view. If you were to pull up a report, where's my report? So let me pull up trial balance right here. And actually, let me do an account. This will be a smaller report. And I'm going to insert, and I do not know if this is going to print to the screen. Okay, good. Print into the screen. That's what I wanted. An easy way to do this is you have to have access to the report writer, but if you click on modify, and of course it opens on another screen. If you go to the report writer, what you could do, I'm going to just close, let's see. Oh, I'm going to close up right here. And in the report definition window, if I go to tables, I could see the two tables right here that are being used. So it's account master and account category master. From that point, you would go file and you would go table descriptions. And let's see if I can work live here. Okay, so you would select, make sure you have Microsoft Dynamics GP selected, because these are going to just show you tables, and in this case, financial. So the account master table is right here. So there's the table number, and the account category master is right here, and here's the table number. And if you highlight this one and just double click, then you can see all the individual fields. And for the most part, you could see like this is an integer account type. And if I go into field info, most of them you could see, okay, one's posting, two's unit, three is so forth. So that's one way around it. Another way around it is, let me close out of here, go back to exit the report writer. There is a site, once this pulls up, I'll paste it in. A former MVP and a friend of mine, we used to work together 150 years ago. Okay, there's our link, Victoria Uden. If you go to the report area, well, actually, let me start with the tables. she gives a lot of guidance on tables. Like, let me go to bank rec tables. This is one of her most well-known sites for people who do a lot of work. And she doesn't have that view in here, but she does tell you what all the different main types and fields represent and what tables you would want to use. And then if you go to GP report, for example, the receivable SQL code, if I come in here, I could get an AR apply detail, which will list all the AR payments, credit memos, and returns in their apply. So, oh, I don't want to apply. I wanted detail. I wanted AR detail, didn't we? An aging. Current receivables, aging, and detail. Shows one row per unpaid transaction with hard-coded aging by due date. So if I come in here, she's telling me how she ages. So she set these agings up. And if you come in, you could create the views for your system if you want. But if you just want to get the data, I'm going to go start at the word select and go just above the word go. Anything in green's comment, I could get it, it won't matter. But now I'm going to right mouse click and copy. Did I do that? Okay. And now when I come back in, if I want to bring that in, I could simply come back to get data. And I'm going to go to database, SQL Server, and let me go to BusyBee 2 and come in here and paste all that in and click OK. And it's going to bring it in for me. So here is my whole aging bucket. Now in my case, Fabricam goes way out in the future, so everything is current because it's not due for a couple years. And if I click load, then it's going to bring that data in. All right, so now I have two queries, and I could come in. Let me just create a new page here. And I'm going to just bring in a table for right now, because I want to get over, and actually, you know what? Let me switch that to a matrix, which is like a pivot table in Excel. And what I'm going to do is start with the customer ID and put that in rows. Then I'm going to get the customer name and put that in rows. Now I can't see it, but if I drill down, I can see the customer name. And then now I'm going to get the document type and put that in rows, the document number. And then in the values, I'm going to put current, 0 to 30, 30, 60, and I'm going to clean it up for you in just a few moments. So I put all of those in. Now I can keep drilling in until I see everything. Okay, that's everything. And just like a pivot table, it creates this outline format. And if we want to put it in a tabular format, which is something I always recommend with pivot tables in Excel, I could come over to the visualization pane, click on format. And then here, if I go to row headers, I just turn off the stepped layout. And now it's tabular. And I still have these subtotals. If I want to keep them, I can, but it might get a little confusing. So I'm going to find my subtotals in my formatting and turn those off. Now, so now I could see all of this detail. If I wanted to see the total for Aaron Fitz, I could collapse Aaron Fitz and I see the total. So that's one way that you could do it right there. So that's something you could play with. But keep in mind, I had access to all those tables that I was working with. Okay, so now let's do something else. Let's go in and do a little bit of data modeling, because we need to spend some time there, or I'm not doing you justice. Because rarely are you going to get data exactly the way you want it. Particularly if we look at this query for the bank balance, it's using the data names, which don't really work for us. And I always say build the reports for the dumbest person in your company. And I don't really mean dumb. I mean probably the most technologically challenged person in the company. And that's the person you need to embrace and make your best friend as you're building reports. Because if you can make it easy for that person, then you're making it easy for everybody. So I want to go into Query Editor to work on these. And what I'm going to do, I need to go back to the Home tab. And there is this transform option. Now, anytime you see an error, you have a drop-down list on the name, but I'm saying click on the icon itself and it's going to open up the query editor. And this query editor is the same one that's in Excel, only it's usually more powerful because it gets updated more frequently. So let's do a little bit of data cleanup. So we'll start with the account transaction ones. I have what I call Belinda's 3 rules when it comes to data modeling. And these 3 rules should always come first. Rule number 1 is you rename the query to something that makes sense. That dumb person in the company, I like to refer to them as grandma because I'm a grandma and I challenge the fact that grandmas are technologically challenged. So these names don't make sense though. We don't know what query 1 is unless we open it up and look at it. And even then, the names aren't something that makes total sense. So I say rename them to something that makes sense. Now you can, on the left where you can see all the queries in our data model, we could right mouse click and name it, or on the right, we have our query settings and we could just rename it over here. And I'm just gonna put a space. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna call this GL space account transactions. That's something that's gonna make a lot more sense to grandma. The next rule would be to get rid of columns you do not need. If I look in the bottom left corner, let me zoom in. I changed my zoom settings, so I always have to look. I have 121 columns. That's way too many. You never want to give somebody 121 columns to find data through. That's going to massively confuse them. So we want to get rid of all the columns we do not need. And usually I say, if you think you don't need it, get rid of it because it's too easy to get them back. So what we're going to do on the Home tab on that ribbon, there is an option right here called Choose Columns. And if I click on this, I get this wonderful list. I wish Excel gave this to us. So I could pick and choose the columns I want. Well, I want to get rid of more than I want to keep. So I'm going to unselect all and then just select the ones that I want. So I'm going to get the journal entry series, transaction number, account number. On account description, I prefer getting the account description from the account master just in case the name changed. I want to get debit and credit. I want to get the account category. I'm going to get the account type. Yeah, so you need to know which one of these you want. Let's see, I'm going to get, I want to get the source. So we could do some lookups right here. So I'm going to go to transaction source. I'm going to go to dates. I want to get the date it was actually posted, not the general ledger date. I already have that in the transaction one. I want to get the originating master ID and the originating master name. And I want to get description. And I want to get reference. And I want to get, let's see, the let me get the years, the open year and the historical year, and maybe the period ID, the fiscal period. And I want to get voids. Now this feels like a lot. These are standard stuff. I'm down to 19. And you'll notice that over here in the applied steps, it's tracking everything that I do. So if I were to come over here and you see in this step, there is a gear. And if I click on that gear, I get this window back. So I could always go back to wherever I wanted it to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup. I want to make sure I get rid of voids. You can have voids in the general ledger if someone enters in a batch in general ledger, a general ledger transaction. If you have the ability to delete transactions turned off, then they have to void it and it becomes part of history. So you might as well assume there will be voids and then go ahead and remove them. That would be true of all transactions. So what I'm going to do is use this filter for voided, just like we would in Excel. And oh, that's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is we're going to set the data types, and I'll do that in just a moment. But the voided option here, I only see no, so I'm going to use the text filter, and I'm going to say, only show me rows or records that have the word no on the voided transaction. Now it tracked that I voided that right here, and I could rename my steps, and you really should. Filtered out voids, so you know what step is what. But now I no longer need this column because I only used it to filter the voids. So I could just right mouse click and remove that column. So now I have 18 columns because I filtered out the voids before I removed the void column. So the voids were gone already and I no longer need that column. So now coming back left to right, the third thing I do is I verify the data type. And you'll see, let's zoom in again. Journal entry is 123. If I wanted to change that, I could just click right there and change the data type. The data type is how this column will react and act, not how it will appear. A good example of that is the date option here. This is date time. Everything that comes from SQL comes in date time, but we rarely use the time. If we do use the time, it's usually a separate field from the date. So I'm going to change this to just be time. So that's how that works. And then I go through and I check all of these. Account numbers text, debits decimal, credits decimal, account category number. That's actually not an account category, and that is text. I'm going to come in here and click on it and change the name, get rid of the number at the end. So now it's just called account category. And let me finish going through my list here. Account type. Oh, I didn't get my open year. Oh, I got closed year instead of open. So let me come back to my list here and go to year again. Whoop. I did not want closed. I wanted open. I'll click OK. And now I'm going to come back to the end and I should have, yep, my history year and my open year side by side. And I'm going to merge these fields together. So I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Originating master name ID, originating posting date. I'm going to change this to a date. And then I have period ID and transaction source. And I really didn't want transaction source. I wanted source document. So I'm going to come in and get source document. Now, just a little bit, I've shown you a little bit of modeling. What I want to do with the year is, because we in GP, the historical year, which it does have a numerical value if I were to come in and add more, and the open year are in two separate fields. I want to make those both one fields, but I can't merge them together because they have different data types. So what I'm going to do is change the historical year from a decimal to text. And now they're, whoops, did not mean to insert. Notice I'm right up here. I need to go to the end. So I'm going to change this to text. And now I want to replace any null fill with nothing. So I'm going to highlight both columns, right mouse click, and I could choose replace values. This is like the find and replace. So find any nulls, and I'm not going to put anything there. So just replace it with the blank. And now that I've done that, I can, on my home ribbon or right mouse click, either one, I can merge these fields together. I would have to go under transform to do this. You could tell here it is. I usually right mouse click. And now how do I want to separate it? I don't want any separated, but I'm going to rename the new column to fiscal year. And now I'm going to go from 18 columns to 17 columns because now this is going to represent the fiscal year, whether it's open or not. Okay, cool. So that's a little bit about data modeling. There's a whole lot more to do. Let me come in and quickly model some of these. This is our bank balance. So I'm going to call this bank balance. So instead of query one, so it'll make a lot more sense. The second thing I want to do is come to home, choose columns, and get rid of unnecessary columns. I want, I want the checkbook ID, the description, the currency ID. Maybe I want to see if it's inactive or not. I'll leave that off for now. Get the current balance. I like to get the last reconciliation date and the last reconciliation balance. Now that I've done that, I could check the data types. This is text, text, text. Oh, I did not want currency ID. I want to, let me get rid of that. We're just going to assume everything's in US right now. Decimal for the current balance, last reconciliation balance, a decimal, and then I have the date for the last date it was reconciled. Now, if I reconciled the statement today on September 29th for August 31st, it would say August 31st there. So I'm going to rename this one to Checkbook ID. And then this one I'll just call Checkbook. And then I'll call this one Current Balance. This is another way I can get my current balance instead of going to that table SY, this is the SY00500. Sorry, I'm seeing them individually here. And then I have last reconciled balance. And get rid of those dashes or those underscores. And there's a reason I get rid of the underscore. So now that I have those done, one thing I might want to do is see how many days it's been since we last reconciled our bank account. So to do that, one of the things that I could do, actually, you know what? Let me come back up here. Well, no, that's okay. Maybe I want, if the current balance, well, no, we'll leave it like this. All right, if the last reconciliation date, I want to see how long it's been since it was reconciled. So what I'm going to do is highlight this column, come up to add column, and notice the date option is available where like time and duration is not. And that's because this is a date column. If I click on it, I have the option for age. And now it shows me how long it's been since this date. Now these are all in the future except for that last one. So let's pretend that's okay. So now I can see age, and I can see up here, I should probably zoom on this. I see a time clock, and if I click on this, I want to change this to a whole number because right now it's showing me days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And I'm going to change this to a whole number so it only shows me days. And I'm going to rename this to days since reconciliation. I like that field because it gives you a level of confidence in the balance. If it hasn't been reconciled ever, or it's been 3 months, I would like to know that. I also want to see the difference between the current balance and the reconciled balance so I can see how much is unreconciled. So what I'm going to do is still under add column, come in and add a custom column. And now in my custom column, I'm going to call this unreconciled. And I'm going to just come in and say, I want to take my, which way do I want to go? Current balance minus my reconciled balance. Now I just put spaces so you could see it better. So I just double clicked here. It's just like adding in a table column in a pivot table. And I want to change this now to decimal. And now I can see the unreconciled balance for my accounts. So that's how easy it is to do some data modeling. Here, I'm just going to rename this to AR TB detail, and we're not going to do anything else with that. So now these make a lot more sense. And if I come in and I click on close and apply, it's going to update the data that's stored in memory. All of those columns that I got rid of will no longer be in the memory. I could go back and get them if I go in the query editor and do things, but it's going to make my file a lot smaller. And so now if I look over here and I open up like the general ledger transaction, notice how much smaller that is. And then if I come over here, I could see each one of the report details. And I don't have anything that I could create a relationship with, but if I did, I could come in and just create a quick relationship right here. Actually, you know what? Let me do one really fast. Let me do, well, we're actually at our time. Are you guys okay if I go 5 more minutes? Yeah? Okay. I think so. I think that was a yes. So I'm going to skip doing a relationship right now. So right now we'll just keep it kind of nice and simple. But now when I come in and I add another report, this time I'm going to come in and actually I'll open up Bank Rec. I'm going to do a table. And in my table here, I'm going to come in and add, let's see, I want to get my checkbook ID. I want to get my current balance. I want to get days since it was reconciled and my unreconciled balance. So now I can see this kind of information. And if I wanted to, let me make this bigger, make the text bigger. And much better. Okay, easier for you guys to see. All right, so there are other things that I could do to it as well. I can, here in visualization, I could come in like on the days reconciled, and I could right mouse click here, and I could say, first of all, don't sum these, because these are not something I want to see summed up. So what I did is I just clicked on don't sum, but I could also come up and add some conditional formatting next to it. So I could say, all right, I could put a background color on it if it's over a certain number of days, or I could put icons on it if I want to. Let me do icons. And I'm just gonna let it based on, let's see, days since reconciling, and I'm not going to do anything super fancy, but now that kind of gives me an indication of which I went the wrong way, obviously. All of the other ones, nope. Yeah, this one way behind should have been the problem, but you could put icons to make things a lot more visually compelling. So this is a real quick and dirty. When you're done, you would just go ahead and do a save as. So let me do a quick save. And Dex Pro. And when I do this, once it's saved, I'm going to click on publish because I am logged in as my Power BI account. And when I click on publish, come on. There we go. I could just publish it to my workspace if you're using the free one, or I could publish it to a specific workspace. And it's going to take the report and everything and publish it all together. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and click on got it. Come in here. And now in my Dex Pro space, I have a report and a data set. And the data set is the connection to all that information in SQL. And then I have the report. And if I click on the report, I could see my 3 individual pages right here. I could open up the filters and add more filtering to them if I want to, right here on the spot. So that's something else I could do. And then once it's in here, there's all kinds of things you could do. Like you could add you can create a dashboard, and you can create dashboards from multiple reports. So whatever's important to you. So if what's important to you is what's going on in the football league in Europe and what's going on in the American Football League and how much cash you have, then for the cash one, you would come in and go, all right, I'm interested in this one. That one's hard to see. Let me come back over here. When I highlight this visual, I get this push pin option. And when I pin on it, it says, hey, right now I don't have a dashboard set up, so I need to create a new one. And I'm gonna create a new one called Dex Pro and pin this down. And now I can go to the dashboard, and here is my dashboard. And I could add all kinds of things. And even in the desktop or Power BI, I can come in and ask questions. So what customer has the highest balance? So I'm going to choose this one. What customer has the highest current balance? It didn't quite get customer, so I'm going to change that to customer name. Oh, not blank balance. The highest current balance. We'll do that. And oh, let me do it another way. Customer current balance by customer. So now here are the current balance by each of the customers. Oh, by customer name. Let me do it a little bit different. That's giving me all the customers. Here we go. I'll just click on one of these. It even guessed some questions for me. So how many customer IDs are there? There's one. If this is one that I want, I can pin this down. So I could also come in and ask other questions. It doesn't have to be about the AR. I could say, how many unit accounts are there? And there are 6 unit accounts. So it got that right. So I could pin that down as well. So you could do all kinds of really cool and powerful things. I have barely touched the surface of this, but hopefully if you use some of the views, you could play around with a little bit more and come back with an awful lot of questions. I'm going to come back in. Next time we won't have to cover the basic information about it. If you would kind of fill this out, and we'll know where we get started next time. And you know, if everyone is saying the same thing, then we might even create our next session in a couple weeks rather than waiting a full month. Maybe wait until summit's over, just to kind of keep some momentum going and get some of your questions answered, because it's important to both Marlena and her team and myself that you take advantage of some of these tools that could really change what you're doing. One of the Power BI reports that I have built for one customer that was saved them hours and hours a week was the AR, building the report of the AR unhosted batches for the transactions where things are coded. Instead of pouring through pages and pages of a printed report, you could just use a dashboard to negotiate back and forth. And I do want to point out, if you fill this out, I'll send you, Marlena, I've built a little free template, and I've got a link to show you how to use it so that you could actually get a few things right away, a report using your own data immediately. You don't have to worry about setting up the gateway before you get started, by the way, in the desktop, only if you're dealing with refreshing in the cloud. And let's see, there was something else I was going to show you, and I just thought of it really quickly. It's already gone from my mind.
It may come back, but I just wanted to say this was I think it was the best intro course you can ask for, especially if you want to start doing Power BI, and at the end, even, you know, seeing how your data is almost transparent. It's almost a shame to not use it with GP. It really is, you know, something that everyone should take advantage of. So I'm so thankful you were able to help today and show us how easy this is and
Yes.
how powerful.
It is very easy. And if you're using the desktop, even if that's all you're using for starters, there is a refresh button right there. So you don't need the gateway for that. It'll automatically go through and get an update from your system right away. So, yeah, if you fill out that chat or that form for me, Marlene and I will send you a gift that will get you started right away with a really simple report that's already built and that will already connect to your data. And beyond that, I can't remember what I was thinking. I was going to say it, but I appreciate everybody's time, and feel free also to put questions in the comment, because if we have something, either Marley, if it's something small, I'll just blog on it, and I have a tiny tip series. And if it's not small, then we'll get through. And I should probably put my how bad am I that I didn't even put my blog on here? My BI Belinda blog.
We have that actually on the page that
Okay.
we have for the event, but yes, so we have all that information on the landing page as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's really, and actually I do have it right in here too, Miss Belinda Allen. But yeah, next time we'll just be able to dig right in and build something right from start to finish, and it should be really good. So thank you guys for attending. Those were great questions.